My name is Jen, and I'm the kind of old autistic lady. And I was just thinking, since tomorrow is Thanksgiving, that I would think of some things that I'm grateful for as a newly diagnosed autistic person. So these are 10. I might do some more at a different point, but I had fun with coming up with these, and I hope you enjoy them. It's meant to be kind of lighthearted. So the first one, a little unconventional, but armpit location. So I struggle with hygiene. Of course I do hygiene routines. I have to. They're necessary. Other people have to be around me. All of those sorts of things. But man, do I hate it. It's just a sensory nightmare. And at some point I hope to make a video on some strategies to make that a little easier. Because I've had to get creative throughout the years. But I think, and maybe this is just me, I think the design of the human body is magnificent when it comes to the whole ability for the nose and the armpit to be able to reach each other to go, is it time that I can't put this off? I'm not only thankful for that about myself, so that I make sure I don't leave my house be around somebody who has to put up with, what I otherwise wouldn't be able to smell if it was farther away. But also, I'm kind of glad I don't have to smell other people who have that same problem. Because I'm pretty I'm not as sensitive to like sound in terms of things that bother me from like a noise or anything like that. But man, scents, put me with a scent I don't like, and it's just bad. It's just bad. I mean, with vision you can close your eyes. With hearing you can plug your ears. But like you can plug your nose, but you still have to breathe, and I can taste scents, if that makes sense. Let me know in the comments, are you able to taste scents if you pinch your nose? I don't know if that's a human thing, a me thing, or an autistic person thing, but I'm really curious. So I'm really grateful for this. I know it's a little strange, but I am. The next one, I have a few here about being born in the modern era. And the first one is textiles. So I picture myself sometimes. I like to read fiction. My favorite author is Ken Follett. And I'm listening right now to the Pillars of the Earth, the second book in that series. And, I've read books, I've listened to them, I know all the plot, but they're set, like over 1,000 years ago. Or around 1,000 years, or, no, not quite that long. 800 years ago? A long time ago. In England. And they talk a lot in those books about the fleece fairs and how, people were wearing wool. And I know because I visit sheep and goat forums because of my special interest with my sheep and goat stamps and paintings, that there are more and less scratchy varieties of wool. But let me tell you, if I was born in a place where I had to wear scratchy wool, I would be the person that would die in the middle of the winter because I just would refuse to wear my clothes and be like, at least if I'm too cold, I'm numb and I can't feel anything. And I hate being cold, so that's saying a lot. And, there's other textiles that are that way too. Like, I hate being cold. I hate being hot. I have about a 0.5 degree Fahrenheit of feeling comfortable with a room temperature. Pretty much always when I do these videos, I have an electric blanket on my lap because I'm so dysregulated from the temperature perspective all the time. And the being born in the modern era with textiles, if I had to wear, people for a long time throughout human history, especially if they were part of the peasantry, maybe owned 1 or 2 sets of clothes, and that was it. You maybe had a backup because you once a week or once a month or however often you were able, had to go beat your clothes against a rock in the river. That happened. That was a thing for a very long time. And, if one of those two sets of clothes, or my only set of clothes, was something that I just couldn't handle from a texture perspective, a sensory perspective, man, that would stink. I'm so glad that isn't me. The next one is also about being born in the modern era, and it's about food choices. Especially in cold climates, for a long time, before modern refrigeration and, electricity and freezers and whatnot, if you didn't grow it, you didn't eat it. And if you did need to trade for something, it had to be within a day's walk or even a horse's ride. But even then, again, for a long time, people had nothing but their feet to get around. And if what's available was something that was unpalatable from a texture or a taste perspective, and I had to eat that for months on end because it was the only food available or one of only a handful of foods available, then it would stink. Or even, let's say you like a particular thing, but you have to get through a winter because you're in the northern hemisphere and you have to eat that same canned thing all winter until, you can grow more. And maybe the fresh texture is great, but then you have to eat the slimy canned texture of whatever it was. Don't get me wrong, there are some canned things that are not that way. But by and large, if I had to do that all the time, and heaven forbid you don't like the smell of, you open up the can and it's, your glass jar and it's like, whoa. So I'm really happy about that. And just, having safe foods is so much easier now. Especially, in the modern era with international trade and whatnot, we can get a lot of things even if they're not grown in the country that we live in. So I'm super grateful for that. The next one, also being born in the modern era, is multi-room houses. I'm not even thinking of like sod houses in the U.S. or anything like that. Just like a standard wooden cabin. If I had to live my entire life sharing one room with other people, I might be in jail for murder. Like, if you can't get away from people, let's say it's the dead of winter and you're just stuck with somebody and, the weather is such that you can't work in the fields that day because, whatever. I know a long time ago they didn't have things to put up with, like a lot of autistic folks, myself included, can hear the buzz of electricity all the time, and it's crazy how annoying that is and painful that can be. So from a volume perspective, you're not dealing with some of the modern things that cause the high volume stuff, but there would still be something. There would be something. Especially in the era where like most people have their livestock and their chickens and stuff inside the house with them, and that's still done in a lot of places in the world. It's not done where I live in the States too often, but if I gotta share my one room with some chickens and I got chicken poop all over, and I gotta no. I'm so glad I'm not in that situation. Again, with being born in the modern era is leisure time. I've thought about this a lot throughout my life. For so much of human history, whether we're talking about, agricultural times, the Industrial Revolution, I'm fortunate enough to live in a place where I do have leisure time. Not everybody does, and I don't take that for granted at all, in all seriousness, because so many people have to work multiple jobs to make ends meet. So many people have to work overtime or work really long shifts, in different sectors like healthcare, and I don't work in any of those sectors, as well as just, there are some employers that exploit their workers, right? But from a modern era perspective, not present day, all these situations can exist that this is also not true. Number one, I really enjoy having time to pursue my special interests. And if I didn't have that time, I don't know how regulated I would be just overall. But also, there's something to be said about being able to recharge and being away, having the ability to get away from other people. I love other people, but most of the time I don't want to be with them if I have a choice. I like to talk a lot. I like the sound of my own voice, but when I have to constantly be thinking about how that communication with the other person is going, I get drained really fast. So, being able to spend my own time by myself where I don't have to do some sort of communal activity is such a blessing, and I'm truly grateful for it. Number 6, running water. My own mother grew up without running water. She was one of many children, and they had to go to basically an outdoor water pump. My mom was silent generation, so was my dad. But incidentally, my dad was a plumber. I don't think that was a mistake. that the girl turned into woman who didn't have running water marries the plumber. But going back to the idea of hygiene, it's one thing to have to force myself to go into the shower or into the bathtub, deal with all that sensory stuff for a couple of minutes, and then be done with it. It's a totally different thing if I have to walk a half a mile or a mile with buckets to go get water from a well or from a water pump. Or, there are definitely getting to be people on this planet right now who there is no fresh water where they live anymore, and it has to be trucked in, and that is not lost on me. But also, obviously, we need water to live. That goes without saying. I'm grateful for that. But from an autism perspective, I was just thinking about when I get stuff on my hands. When I eat, I can't stand stuff on my hands. Nope. After every single bite or every couple of bites, I am trying to get the napkin. My napkins end up very used, even if I have very little on my hands, because I just don't like the sensation of having any sort of food on them. Same thing with anything sticky. Ugh. I absolutely loathe when I'm in a place and I accidentally touch something that I didn't know was there that's sticky, like if somebody stuck bubble gum under a seat or something, or, anything like that. If I can't go wash my hands right away, I'm trying not to cuss when I say this. I am not a sane person at that point. I cannot focus on anything. I cannot do anything but talk about how miserable I am. I just short circuit into, maybe you would call that a meltdown. I don't know. Being newly diagnosed, I've never really thought about meltdowns before. It's probably the closest thing I get to a meltdown from a normal occurrence happening. So yeah, running water and the fact that most buildings where I live have running water is a big deal. Plus, I spent the first few years out of college as a teacher in a high school in the early aughts, and I taught in a 40-year-old temporary classroom that was like a stand-alone building that had 3 classrooms in it, and there was no running water. So every time somebody needed to get a drink or use the restroom, they had to leave the building I was in and walk to the other one. So there were many times when I had forgotten to check my water bottle and went, oh shoot, I didn't have a chance to fill this up. And I drank too much last period, and I'm stuck teaching. I was stuck teaching without, the ability to drink more water, and that is also miserable in its own way. Number 7, just by having a variety of choices available. When I grew up, my parents really weren't into music. They listened to a lot of AM radio and sports on the radio. And if they watched TV, it was never something that was music related, unless every once in a while something like country music related would come on and my dad would watch it. But even that was pretty rare. So I really wasn't exposed to anything other than church music and the little bit of like AM radio kind of stuff. And my dad never played the radio in the car, ever. And my mom, it was almost always like talk radio, news, listening to a baseball game, that sort of thing. And so for a long time growing up, I thought that the reason other kids thought I was weird was because, like, I didn't know their references to stuff like music. Turns out I was also autistic, and somebody forgot to give me the memo. But, I blamed a lot of that on my upbringing. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely some things about how I was raised that exacerbated this, and I'll probably get into them in another video. But turns out just blaming yourself for not knowing musical references when you're 7 years old, not your fault. And being autistic is also by no means anybody's fault or wrong or bad. But you put the two things together of I'm autistic and don't realize it, and I don't know who Madonna is, or I don't know who Paula Abdul is, and in the early 80s. And it wasn't a recipe for being able to make friends very easily. Number 8, long-distance calling options. Oh, wait, let me go back to the last one. A variety of choices. So what I originally meant when I made this note to myself is about music choices, right? Like, so if I was stuck having to listen to popular radio after the immense amount of either free or subscription-based services that we have now for music, I might just, I don't know, I'd have to find something else to do to take up my time. I posted a short of my favorite singer today. He's in Kazakhstan. Certainly, if I was born in a different era and he was born in a different era, I wouldn't know who he was. So I like very niche sort of things. I like international music. I really like Irish music. I have a very eclectic taste in music. So just the choices available. Or like salad dressing, for example. I'm not a big salad eater for lots of reasons. But in the rare times that I do eat a salad, if I had to eat the salad dressing that is mostly served like on a salad bar or whatever, I can maybe get along with some ranch. But one of my food pickiness things that I'm now realizing is because I'm autistic is that the sight of sauces and whatnot really grosses me out. The smell. There are very few sauces I like. And salad dressing fits into that. So I'm really glad that there's a variety because the color, the texture, the smell makes it so that I can find something that's palatable, along with all kinds of other food options, book options. Most of humanity did not have these choices for most of human history, so I'm very grateful for it. So now going back to number 8, long-distance calling options beyond paying for long-distance charges. A common theme that you're going to hear me talk about on this channel are the friends I have and the friends I don't have. And the friends I do have, the ones that have stuck with me throughout the years, they know that I'm kind of weird. I mean, by neurotypical standards, for sure, I'm weird. But, within the neurodivergent community, I'm different. I'm different. Different isn't good, it isn't bad, it just is. So there's that. I mean, that in and of itself is a challenge. There's the fact that, leave me a comment to tell me if you're the same way. I really want to be included and invited into things because it gives me warm feelings knowing that people like being in my presence and enjoy being around me. So I tell most people that I work with, most people that I have been acquaintances with, and certainly people that have stuck with me throughout the years as friends, that I want to be invited, but please don't ask me to like actually arrive at your social event, because I don't want to be there. And in the rare instance that I do want to be there, and the whole thing seems like it's not going to make me freak out. I say freak out a lot. It's an overused word. I don't really mean freak out. Stressed out, anxiety. In the rare instance that I'm like, okay, I'm going to accept your invitation to come and do whatever it is. The people that are my friends know. I need to know the parameters of what's going on. Am I expected to bring something? Don't just tell me don't worry about it, and then I show up without anything, and everybody else has brought something because they understand the social cue of saying, oh no, don't bring anything, really means bring something. Tell me when I actually need to be there, because the whole fashionably late thing drives me absolutely bonkers. Like, if you want me there at 8, tell me you want me. Tell me to come at 8. If you want me there at 8:15, tell me I'm supposed to be there at 8:15. Don't mess around with the whole, I say one thing and then I really mean something else. It drives me, If you're autistic, you probably understand this. And I have some friends that have stuck with me who frankly have borne more weight in the relationship in terms of making effort. It used to be that if you wanted to talk to somebody that didn't live really close to where you lived, it was very expensive to talk on the phone. There was a guy that I was in high school, I knew this guy, but he didn't go to my high school. We had a shared interest, and he was also somebody that didn't have a ton of friends, and he very platonic. And he would call me once a week, and we talked for an hour. And his phone bills were just huge, on what a high school kid can make at a part-time job. He was really sacrificing something to call me, and I didn't have the money to call him. But that meant a lot to me because I didn't have very many friends, or I had friends that kind of drifted in and out of, being in my circle versus being in circles with someone else, and then maybe back, which also was really confusing to me at the time because I didn't realize that was sort of a normal neurotypical thing. You just sort of change friend groups, and I took it all personally, But people know that I'm not going to call them. I'm not going to call them, and I probably am not going to text you either. Just know. My social battery, even for texting, is very low compared to the populace as a whole. But I am grateful that if I do want to talk to somebody who's long distance, that I can, and that's not a financial consideration in terms of, wow, I'm going to end up with a $100 phone bill above and beyond the base price that I'm already paying for. Number 9, I'm really thankful for YouTube, the internet, search engines, and just plain researching options in general. I'm now understanding that this is probably because I'm autistic, but my brain, if I'm here and there's a rabbit hole over here to go down, I will go down the rabbit hole and I will research until I find the answer to whatever's at the end of that rabbit hole. And I really can't go back to whatever the thing I was doing before the rabbit hole showed up. And I try to make it very efficient time-wise, but if I had to go backwards in a time machine and go to like the 1980s or early 1990s, or even late 1990s, a lot of people, even at that time, computers were still really expensive. It had to go back to like a card catalog and being limited to what was in my local library to learn about, and then had to be at the mercy of somebody who didn't have that book checked out. I'm just really grateful that the amount of information is out there that is out there. And I have to really thank autistic creators on YouTube for even the fact that I am diagnosed as autistic right now, because especially female autistic creators because I didn't know anything about how autism can show up in women in terms of behaviors and mannerisms and experiences. And so if I didn't have that, I probably would have died, gone through my entire life and died, basically just having this self-blame of, well, I have a hard time relating to people, not typical people, but people, and thinking it was just something I was doing wrong all the time instead of being normal for an autistic person. So I'm super grateful for that. And last one, I don't know why this came into my head. My train of thought tonight was really scattered. Is modern menstruation products. I remember when, like, I went through, my first period, and teachers were talking about, like, what was going to happen, like, in school and everything. This was, like, 80s, 90s, I'm a Zennial. I was born right at the end of Gen Z, right the last month of that year. Not Gen Z, Gen X, and then what we would now call millennials. And the horror stories I heard from women in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s of what they had to use and what that was like and how uncomfortable it was, all of that, just, I can't imagine going back to that. I really can't. And then you add to things like, okay, let's put some of these things together in my list. I'm thinking of my mother, right? Like, she grew up without running water, but she also had, like, pre-modern menstruation products. And, I mean, that's a whole different level of having to deal with life. And most women in human history, that was their reality of, you don't have access to clean running water, and you also don't have access to something that just keeps you really hygienic, and you barely think about it in terms of being able to just go on with your life, and it's really for that reason. I'm going to add a number 11 on here that I'm really grateful for. The ability to work, really, even and have that choice as a woman. I can see why it was way more difficult, because if you don't have access to those two things, you're really stuck in terms of what you can do, especially if we were talking years ago where there's not remote work and all these other kinds of things. So I'm really grateful for all of those things. I'm grateful for more than just that, but those were the things that were on my mind today. So I hope you enjoy the content. If you like this content, visit my channel again, like, subscribe, that whole shebang that you hear every other YouTube creator talk about. But I'd like to hear in the comments, what are the things as an autistic person, or as a neurotypical person, if you've stumbled across my channel, or as a neurodiverse person who maybe is autistic, but you have maybe a different type of neurodivergence. What are you thankful for, and why? Thanks for watching.